You ever find yourself on your knees in your own driveway, holding a pair of digital calipers up to a pebble and wondering where it all went sideways? Yeah, that was me. Tuesday morning, just after sunrise, still in my bathrobe, measuring a chunk of gravel that barely poked past legal HOA limits. It was 0.81 inches wide. The rule said 0.75 max. That pebble 0.06 inches of criminal rebellion was apparently enough to warrant a $100 violation notice from the Pleasant Hills Homeowners Association. I didn't need to check the name on the envelope to know who sent it. No, that smugly folded cream-colored letterhead practically screamed Cynthia Masters, HOA president, crusader of conformity, self-appointed guardian of decorative mulch uniformity. She and I had a story, a colorful, petty, deeply personal kind of history. My name's Raymond, by the way. Retired software developer, 51 years old, and apparently public enemy #1 in Pleasant Hills. Couple years ago, after I sold off my company, I figured I'd finally do something for myself. Bought 20 acres of land on the edge of the subdivision. No one wanted it because a decommissioned freight spur sliced right through it like a scar. To me, it was perfect. I had no use for golf or fishing or beach houses. My dream was simple: build and operate a private heritage railway. Not for show, for joy. To the rest of Pleasant Hills, that spur was an eyesore. To me, it was everything. I started quiet, cleaned up the rails, laid concrete for the base of what would become the terminal, spent years restoring a 1957 GP9 diesel locomotive in secret. She was a beast, 120 tons of steel painted in bright orange and blue, her engine purring like a satisfied dragon. I named her the Liberty Bell. I didn't ask for HOA approval because, well, I didn't need it. My land, my rights. But Cynthia never saw it that way. She rolled up the first morning of construction in her champagne-colored Audi, hair sprayed to within an inch of its life, holding a clipboard and a measuring tape. "You planning on building a factory back here, Raymond?" she asked, voice soaked in artificial sweetness. "Nope," I said, not looking up. "Just a little nostalgia." "Well, nostalgia better not violate Section 14, subparagraph D of the HOA Charter. No commercial structures, no industrial noise, no visible utilities." I just nodded, smiled, and went back to work. And that's when it started. Inspections. Complaints. Threats of legal action. She called the county. Sent drones over my property. At one point, she accused my contractor's portable restroom of being a permanent illegal structure. My lawyer, bless his dry wit, sent her a response that included the rental agreement and a suggestion to take up watercolor painting instead of amateur surveillance. Every day felt like trench warfare. But I had something Cynthia didn't: permits. Every inch of track, every fence post, every labor hour was documented and signed off by the county. She hated that. You could see it in the way her lips pursed tighter each time she had to step around legal compliance. Still, the crossing was the real powder keg. See, the spur bisected my access road. Entirely on my land, mind you, but the spot was visible from the second story of Cynthia's pristine colonial. She watched that crossing like a hawk, certain it was her jurisdiction. I installed classic red and white crossing arms, LED lights, and bells. Top of the line. She called it visual pollution. I called it safety. And then came the final move. I sent a certified letter to the HOA board, specifically to Cynthia, informing them of a scheduled test run of the Liberty Bell. Saturday, 2 p.m. Precautionary measures. Slow-speed engine test. Crossing in operation. No obstructions permitted. Signed, sealed. Return receipt requested. I got her signature back 2 days later. Saturday came bright and still. At 1 p.m., I was in the cab. The diesel fumes, the humming metal, the way the controls vibrated under my palm's earpiece. I ran through the checklist like I had 100 times before. Batteries, isolation switch, fuel pump. Starter. The GP9 roared awake. At 1:45, I got a text. It was Cynthia. "I got your letter, Raymond. If that monstrosity makes one peep, I'm calling the sheriff." I replied simply, "Noted. Just keep your car off the crossing." No reply. That was warning enough. At 1:57, I eased the throttle. The Liberty Bell crept forward. A lumbering giant, slow and sure, rolling along the newly laid rail like she'd waited decades for this moment. And then, there it was. Parked squarely across the tracks was Cynthia's Audi. Pearl champagne paint glinting in the sun. Perfectly aligned wheels resting on steel rail. Empty. She was standing on her porch 150 yards away, phone to her ear, smirking like she'd already won. I stopped. Honked the horn. A blast that shook birds from the treetops. Nothing. I called her. You have 60 seconds to move your car, I said. This is my neighborhood, Raymond. You can't bully your way through. 30 seconds. You'll be arrested. You'll lose everything. 15. Go to hell. Click. I looked at Gus, standing safely off to the side with a camcorder already rolling. He nodded. I had the permits, the warnings, the documentation, the footage. I pulled the throttle. The Liberty Bell surged forward. Impact wasn't a crash. It was a statement. The Audi folded like a soda can under the weight. The horn blared. The crossing arms lowered. The bells sang. The train rolled on, unbothered by the luxury carcass being scraped from its path. I stopped 60 feet past the crossing. The air went still. Cynthia was still on her porch, mouth moving, eyes wide, disbelief pouring off her in waves. 7 minutes later, 2 sheriff cruisers rolled up. One deputy talked to her. The other came to me. Afternoon, he said. Can you explain what happened? I handed him the binder. Deed. Permits. Certified letter. Return receipt. Video footage. Phone records. He watched for 5 minutes, silent. Then he sighed. As far as we can tell, she was trespassing, you gave notice, and, well, this is private property. It's a civil issue. We won't be filing charges. He paused. But, maybe don't do this every weekend? I smiled. Only if she parks there again. Word spread fast. By Monday, I wasn't just Raymond the train guy. I was legend. Strangers nodded. Mister. Lowell brought me pie. Kids waved from bikes. Thursday night's HOA meeting was packed. Cynthia stood at the front, trying to spin herself as a victim. But when I played the footage, complete with her screaming threats and the slow, steady advance of justice, the room turned. Someone called for a vote. 49-1. She was out. A week later, her house had a for sale sign. The new owners? A retired couple from Arizona. Said they loved trains. Gus and his crew showed up a month later with lumber and blueprints. Built me a proper station platform. Called it a gift. Now, every Saturday, I take kids for rides at 5 miles an hour. Sometimes we grill. Sometimes we just sit on the bench and listen to the hum of the engine. My driveway stays clean these days. Not a single pebble in sight. And the Liberty Bell? She never stops smiling. Sometimes at dusk, I lean back on that little wooden bench, station sign proudly swinging in the breeze, and I can still hear Cynthia's voice echoing faintly in my memory right before it got drowned out by a train horn.